the underground garage, crimson, furred cat whispers prime numbers. Wet asphalt beneath my sneakers absorbs the sound, making the words *3711* vibrate up through my soles like a subsonic hum. The cattiest fur, deep crimson like coagulated blood under the flickering fluorescence, glistens with condensation. It doesn't look at me. It stares at the far wall, its low murmur a constant, unsettling counterpoint to the garage. A stamp silence. I adjust the mic on my podcast recorder, the hissy of the preamp a tiny rebellion against the deeper thrumming in the air. Focus Samuel, just record the atmosphere. But the air tastes of decaying leaves, thick and sweetly rotten, clinging to the back of my throat. My breath plumes white, fogging the cold glass of the car door. I am leaning against the compass in my pocket. Cold steel against my thigh. Suddenly funjoltzy, not a gentle turn but a violent, almost painful spin. Needle whipping towards the garage. Farthest corner, decay or see the thought unbidden, feels less like my own and more like a whisper from the cat, as murmured numbers. I push off the car, the concrete floor slick underfoot. Each step a shush of damp residue. The low frequency pulsing intensifies, vibrating up through the soles of my boots, rattling my molars, a physical pressure behind my eyes. Walls exhale the smell of rotting leaves, not just a scent, but a tangible breath, thick enough to choke on. I walk through solid concrete as if it was smoke, the pulsing feather and thrum, syncing with my own heartbeat, making the air shiver. I reach the corner, a door labeled Decay Source is set into the concrete wall, unyielding, ancient iron. No handle. Just the cold, pitted metal. I press my palm against it. The vibration intensifies, a deep, fuddy groan resonating from the stone itself, making the hair on my arms stand up. I step back, my boot catching on something wet. I look down. A puddle of iridescent oil slicks the concrete, reflecting the flickering lights in fractured, oily rainbows. And in that distorted reflection, not my own face, but the garage's far wall, the cat's crimson fur, and deep purple light reflecting from its eyes. Too deep purple, not natural. The cat is perched on the hood of a rusted sedan, watching me, its eyes holding that impossible, unnatural violet. Its whisper is a dry funtracle on the wet asphalt. *13, 17, 19 *. I turn, heart hammering against my ribs, the thrithrum now a physical ache in my chest. The exit gate, a massive iron barrier at the garage, entrance, stands open. I take one step towards it, the shush of my sneakers loud in the oppressive quiet. Then, a sound like grinding teeth, a deep, metallic screech, grind, that shakes dust from the ceiling. I freeze. The heavy iron gates, wide open moments before, are closing with deliberate, grinding slowness. Screech, grind. Screech, grind. Each movement is a violent protest against the concrete frame, a sound that vibrates the air itself. I run, my sneakers slipping on the oil slick, the foy thrum. Now a roar in my ears, the decaying leaf smell overwhelming. I reach the gate just as the final inch of cold iron slides shut, sealing the sound of my own ragged breath inside the garage. The screech, grind cuts off abruptly, leaving only the deep, resonant thrithrum and the cat's final whisper on the wet asphalt. *23*. I press my forehead against the cold, unyielding iron, my breath fogging the metal. The garage is silent except for the pulsing vibration and the faint, wet twit drip. Drippy of condensation from the ceiling, echoing the prime numbers in the dark. The cat's deep purple eyes reflect in the oily puddle at my feet, watching me from the hood of the car. The deed swam before my eyes, parchment brittle and yellowed under the sickly fluorescent hum. Plague, era legalese. My great-aunt Alara, a name I barely remembered, had left me this house, this labyrinth. The smell of decaying leaves was a physical weight now, pressing against my sinuses, a damp blanket suffocating any attempt at clear thought. I ran a hand over my face, the stubble scratchy against my palm. Focus Samuel, just translate the damn thing. The pulsing thrum in the concrete floor resonated with my frustration, a low, guttural groan that seemed to emanate from the house itself. The study, a claustrophobic alcove carved into the garage, concrete, felt smaller than it had earlier. The walls seemed to be subtly shifting, pressing inward. I adjusted the lamp, the bulb flickering weakly, casting elongated shadows that danced with the dust motes suspended in the air. Each word on the parchment seemed to writhe, mocking my efforts. Inheriting a dwelling, unknown relation. Asterisk, the phrases blurred, the ink bleeding into the fibrous paper. Disappointment settled in my stomach. A cold, heavy stone. What had I expected? A treasure map? A hidden fortune? Just more dust and decay. Then I heard it, a whisper, thin as a spider, silk slithering beneath the thrumming. It wasn't seat or voice I recognized, yet it felt intimately familiar, like a half-forgotten memory struggling to surface. Asterisk, the house consumes voices to feed the fractal. Asterisk, the words echoed, not from a specific point, but from everywhere at once, vibrating within the concrete. Within my skull. I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs, searching for the source. A figure coalesced from the shadows, a wraith in tattered robes, its form flickering like a dying flame. The air around it shimmered, distorting the light. It wasn't solid, yet I felt a palpable chill radiating from it. A bone, deep cold that seeped into my marrow. The smell of decay intensified, a cloying sweetness that made my stomach churn. Its face was obscured by shadow, but I sensed eyes, ancient and weary, fixed upon me. The cat, perched on a stack of crates, watched with those unnerving purple eyes, its crimson fur gleaming in the dim light. Asterisk 23 asterisk. A dry, rasping whisper. The fractal requires sustenance, the wraith murmured, its voice a chorus of rustling leaves and grinding stones. Voices, memories, they nourish the structure. It gestured towards the deeds with a skeletal hand. Your efforts are amusing, but futile. The words seemed to drain the color from the room, leaving everything tinged with a sickly gray. The thrum intensified, a physical pressure against my eardrums. I swallowed, the taste of rot coating my tongue. The compass in my pocket twindy jolted again, violently this time, the needle spinning wildly before settling on a point I hadn't noticed before. A closet, tucked into the far corner of the study, barely larger than a shoebox. It shouldn't be there. The dimensions were impossible, defying the geometry of the room. I felt a compulsion, an irresistible urge to approach it. Fidike sorcidi, the thought echoed in my mind, a pre-programmed directive. I took a step, then another, the concrete floor slick beneath my sneakers. The wraith didn't move, didn't speak. The cat remained motionless, a crimson statue in the gloom. As I neared the closet, I noticed a puddle on the floor, reflecting the flickering light. I looked down, and my reflection wasn't my own. Standing behind me, a spectral echo of the wraith, its shadowed face tilted at an unsettling angle. A wave of nausea washed over me. I reached for the handle, my fingers brushing against cold, damp metal. As I did, the closet door began to shrink. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a gradual, almost imperceptible contraction. The wood seemed to fold in on itself, the edges receding, the frame diminishing. The shrinking accelerated, the process becoming visibly faster. I watched, frozen in place, as the door dwindled to half its original size. The thrumming escalated into a deafening roar, the smell of decay overwhelming. My hand passed through the shrinking frame, the sensation like plunging it into ice water. The study spun, the walls blurring, the wraith, reflection looming larger. A metallic screech, green resonated through the concrete as the iron gates began to close. The shrinking door felt wrong, not just small, but wrong. Like a violation of geometry, a tear in the fabric of what I understood to be possible. My hand remained suspended in the icy void, the metal biting into my skin. The thrumming had become a physical tremor, shaking the concrete floor, rattling the fillings in my teeth. The case or C, the word pulsed in my mind, a relentless command. I stepped through. The study didn't end. It folded. One moment I was in the claustrophobic alcove, the next I was, elsewhere, identical. A perfect replica of the study, but smaller. The fluorescent hum was tinier, the smell of decay subtly sweeter. The deeds lay on the desk, identical to the ones I'd been examining. Even the dust motes danced in the same patterns. A dizzying sense of deja vu slammed into me, a wave of nausea threatening to buckle my knees. My reflection stared back from a miniature mirror on the wall, smaller, younger, and terrified. He was screaming silently, his mouth a distorted O of horror. I blinked, and the image wavered, as if viewed through heat rising from asphalt. The cat was there too, smaller, its crimson fur now streaked with iridescent oil-slick patterns that shimmered with an unnatural light. It fixed me with those unsettling purple eyes, a silent, insistent pressure urging me forward. The thought echoed, Not as a whisper this time, but as a direct injection into my consciousness. I moved, compelled. The study behind me began to shrink, the walls receding, the ceiling lowering. It wasn't a collapse, but a contraction, a folding inward, like a paper origami crane being crushed in a fist. The metallic screech greened of the iron gates resonated, a mournful dirge echoing through the diminishing space. Another door, another identical study, smaller still, another screaming reflection, each room a perfect echo, a miniature replica of the last, receding into an infinite regression. The thrumming intensified with each step, a low, guttural moan that resonated within my bones. The smell of decay grew cloying, a sickly sweetness that coated the back of my throat. It's not a copy. A thought bloomed in my mind, unbidden, unwelcome. It's the original being erased. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Each reflection wasn't a copy, but a version of myself, systematically being overwritten. The screaming intensified, a silent chorus of despair. The cat padded ahead, its crimson fur a beacon in the increasingly dim light. Each room felt colder than the last, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. I stumbled, catching myself on a miniature desk. The wood felt strangely soft, almost yielding to the touch. The compass in my pocket thiddy jolted, the needle spinning wildly before settling on a point directly behind me. I turned. Another Samuel, smaller still, trapped within a room the size of a thumbnail. His reflection, a minuscule distortion in the air, screamed silently, his eyes wide with a terror that transcended words. The spectral librarian, a wraith in tattered robes, stood behind him, its shadowed face tilted at an unsettling angle. Its skeletal hand reached out, not towards Samuel, but towards something. Intangible. A device. A shimmering, iridescent orb, pulsing with a sickly purple light. The librarian's hand closed around it, and a wave of energy pulsed outward, engulfing the miniature Samuel. The screaming stopped. The reflection vanished. The room behind me shrunk to the size of a thumbnail. The cat let out a soft, almost mournful fun chirp, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. It turned and padded towards another door, another identical study, smaller still. The thrumming intensified. The smell of decay became overwhelming. I felt a pull, a compulsion, an irresistible urge to follow. The fractal structure beckoned, an infinite regression into a nightmare of diminishing selves. My own reflection, in the room behind me, began to shrink. The dreams are always the same now. My listeners report them in the comments, fragmented snippets of a nightmare they can wake from. Asterisk, a librarian in robes of blackened parchment, fingers curled like withered leaves, pressing a hand to my throat while my voice unravels into static. Asterisk, I should, V ignored it, but the letters keep coming. The voices overlapping in my head like a chorus of the dead. Asterisk 13, 17, 19. Asterisk, the numbers hum beneath my skin, vibrating in my bones, syncing with the low frequency thrum of the garage. The cat sits on the hood of a rusted sedan, its crimson fur drinking in the dim light, iridescent streaks pulsing like oil on water. It doesn't blink as it whispers again, the digits slipping from its jaws like syllables stolen from a forgotten tongue. My fingers twitch. The oil, slick patterns are spreading, deep purple veins crawling up my arms, fracturing my reflection in the garage. Grimy windows. I press a hand to the glass of the car's side mirror, watching the cracked spiderweb across my own face. The reflection doesn't match. Its thinner, hollow-eyed lips moving in silent desperation. Asterisk, say something. Asterisk, I mouth, but my voice dissolves into a wet crackle, like a radio tuning past a dead station. The reflection's mouth opens wider, wider, a scream trapped behind a veil of static. I press harder, fingers numb against the cold surface. The glass is warm beneath my palm, almost alive, as if the reflection is reaching back. The cat's tail flicks. Asterisk 13, 17. Asterisk, the numbers pulse in the air, bleeding from the walls in sickly purple light. The garage's iron gates groan. They're grinding a metallic dirge that vibrates through my teeth. My reflection, skin begins to fracture, thin cracks like spiderwebs, then deeper, jagged lines splitting the glass. The static intensifies, a white noise hurricane in my skull. I press my ear to the mirror, expecting silence, but instead hear the whispers of 1,000 stolen voices, overlapping, drowning. The reflection's mouth moves again, lips peeling back from teeth too sharp, too many. A voice. No, a chorus, scratches at the back of my throat, but when I try to speak, only the crackle remains. The cat steps forward, its purple eyes fixed on the reflection, S-glass prison. The numbers bleed from its fur now, digits woven into the crimson like a curse. Asterisk 19, asterisk the last number hangs in the air, a weight pressing down on my chest. The reflection, skin splits with a sound like shattering ice. The static swells, a scream trapped in the glass. And then, the iron gates grind shut behind me. The reflection's face is gone. Only the cracks remain, and the cat's whisper, echoing in the silence like a countdown to something worse. The garage walls breathe now, their concrete ribs expanding in slow, wet pulses of deep purple. My fingers press against the damp surface. It's slick, almost 20 olive, the veins of light flickering like veins beneath translucent skin. The compass in my pocket hums, its needle vibrating against my thigh, dragging me toward the decay. Not a direction, not a place. Tentuite fipul, like being sucked into a wound. The air reeks of damp leaves and something older, something fermenting. The scent of a body left too long in the earth. My reflection in the rusted car door isn't mine anymore. The face staring back is thinner, its skin split at the corners of the mouth, peeling back like parchment. I drag my nails down the glass. No, not glass. The metal sunbreathes, beneath my touch warping, reforming into a mirror. And in that mirror, the fractal repeats, the garage, smaller now, its walls pulsing with the same sickly light. The cat sits on the hood of the car, its crimson fur drinking in the glow, the digits asterisk 13. 17, asterisk bleeding from its paws like ink. It doesn't move, doesn't blink, just watches. The pull is stronger now, a low-frequency thrum vibrating through my bones, syncing with the pulse of the walls. My skin tightens, flakes like oil on water, revealing the iridescent pattern beneath. Deep purple veins spreading across my arms, fracturing my reflection further. The mirror Samuel isn't screaming. His smiling lips cracked, teeth too sharp, too many asterisk. Say something asterisk, the reflection mouths, but no sound comes. Only the static, a white noise hurricane in my skull, drowning out the whispers. I stumble forward, the floor tilting beneath me. The garage shrinks, walls closing in, ceiling pressing down. The air thickens, sticky with the scent of decay. The cat fur dissolves into the iridescent pattern, digits dissolving into the walls like water. The compass pull is a vice now, dragging me into the smaller room. The door slams shut behind me. The librarian stands in the center, its robes of blackened parchment fluttering, though there's no wind in its hands. A mask. My face, hollow-eyed, lips stitched shut. Asterisk you, read the copy now. Asterisk it murmurs, voice like pages turning. The walls pulse, the light bleeding through my skin, my bones, my reflection in the mask fund blinksy. Then it fanas, I collapse. The floor isn't floor anymore. It's a mirror, and the fractal repeats. Endless garages, endless walls pulsing with purple light. The cat's voice echoes from the dark, asterisk 19. Asterisk the last number, the last pull. The iron gates grind shut behind me. My skin is a mirror now, reflecting the fractal. And I am not the original. The room smells of antiseptic and quiet desperation. Beige. Everything is beige. The walls, the carpet, the therapist's placid expression. I grip the worn armrests of the chair, the vinyl sticking slightly to my skin. It feels like a physical manifestation of the discomfort I'm trying to articulate. It's getting worse, I manage, the words scraping against my throat like dry leaves. Worse how, Samuel? Dr. Albright's voice is smooth, practiced the kind of voice designed to soothe anxieties. It doesn't, it just amplifies the hollow ache in my chest. The garage. It's changing the walls. They breathe. I can almost see the purple veins pulsing beneath the surface of my eyelids, a phantom echo of the concrete. A low thrum vibrates in my teeth, a fuine. 3, 5. A whisper. I glance at the window. The cat is there, perched on the sill, a crimson stain against the sterile backdrop. It's not meowing. It's murmuring. Samuel, you're describing a structure. Concrete and brick don't breathe. Albright's tone is patient, bordering on condescending. I can feel the familiar sting of disappointment rising in my throat. They never believe me. It's not just the walls I press on, desperate to be understood. My reflection. It's not right. It's peeling. Like parchment. I remember the cracked lips, the two sharp teeth, the smile, the fractal repetition. The garage, smaller and smaller, receding into an impossible depth. The compass in my pocket hums against my thigh, a frantic, buzzing insistence. 7, 11, 13. The cat's voice is clearer now, a guttural murmur that seems to bypass my ears and resonate directly within my skull. It's not English, not exactly. Something older. Something wrong. I try to focus on Dr. Albright's face to anchor myself to the reality of this room, but the purple light bleeds in at the edges of my vision. Samuel, I understand you're experiencing distress. These are likely insomnia hallucinations, exacerbated by the stress of inheriting your great-aunt's property. She gestures towards a notepad on her desk. We can explore relaxation techniques, perhaps adjust your sleep medication. My skin feels tight, stretched too thin. I can feel the iridescent pattern shimmering beneath the surface, a network of deep purple veins spreading like a malignant bloom. I clench my fists, trying to suppress the tremor that's shaking my hands. The cat's whisper intensifies, layering over Dr. Sang. Albright's words a discordant drone. It's not a hallucination, I insist, my voice cracking. It's a really... I describe the cellular breakdown. The feeling of my skin dissolving, the metallic tang of decay in the air. The words feel inadequate, clumsy attempts to convey the visceral horror of it all. 17, 19. The cat's voice shifts, coalescing into something I recognize, something that chills me to the bone. It's not just a murmur now, it's a dialect. A Black Death-era vernacular, laced with archaic grammar and a chilling formality. The words are unintelligible, yet I understand them perfectly. They speak of replacement, of mimicry, of becoming. Dr. Albright leans forward, her expression unreadable. Your fear isn't being replaced, Samuel. It's Sabudim the replacement. The words hang in the air, echoing with a resonance that isn't her own. It's the librarian's voice, cold and precise, laced with a chilling amusement. The room seems to warp, the beige walls blurring, the antiseptic smell fading into the familiar stench of damp leaves and fermenting decay. A sharp, metallic clang reverberates through the room. I whirl around. The door to the therapy office has slammed shut. I rush to it, twisting the handle, but it won't budge. I turn back to Dr. Albright, but she's gone. The beige walls shimmer, the room dissolving into a fractal repetition of garages, pulsing with purple light. The cat's voice, a chorus of prime numbers, fills the void. 23. The window behind me isn't a window anymore. It's a mirror, and in that mirror I don't see Dr. Albright. I see the garage. I see the pulsing walls. And I see a reflection, not mine, but something else, something copied. The reflection smiles, a slow, deliberate curve of the lips, revealing teeth that are too sharp, too many. A grinding sound, like metal protesting against itself, fills the air, the iron gates. They're closing. The ledger felt slick beneath my fingers, the parchment brittle and yellowed. The smell intensified. 20, not just decay, but something older, something preserved, like a taxidermied memory. 27, 31. The cat's murmuring, a constant, unsettling counterpoint to the rustling of the pages. I knelt amongst the dust-choked boxes, the garage air thick enough to taste. Each breath scraped against my throat, a gritty reminder of the encroaching rot. The pulsing of the walls was a physical thing now, a rhythmic throb that resonated in my teeth. It wasn't just visual I could feel. The script was cramped, spidery, a language I somehow understood despite never having seen it before. The librarian collects voices to anchor the fractal during the Great Death. The words swam before my eyes, the purple light intensifying, bleeding into the ink. Anchor, fractal. The compass in my pocket vibrated, a frantic tremor against my thigh. 37, 41. It pointed directly at a faded portrait hanging on the wall, soofed in a man with my face, but older, harder, his eyes holding a chillingly familiar emptiness. A bone creak whisper slithered from the shadows, a sound that bypassed my ears and resonated directly within my skull. The air grew frigid, the smell of decay sharpening. I slowly turned. She stood there, framed by the pulsing walls, a figure ripped from a forgotten tapestry. Medieval robes, stained with something dark and viscous. A bone-thin face etched with an unsettling serenity. The librarian. Her eyes were black pools, reflecting the purple light with a predatory gleam. In her hands, she held an artifact, a spiraling construct of human bone, polished to a sickening sheen. It hummed with a low, resonant frequency that made my teeth ache. "You were sufficient always see the copy," she hissed, her voice a dry rustling of leaves overlaid with the cat's guttural murmur. The words felt like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. I stumbled back, knocking over a box filled with brittle yellowed letters. The sound echoed in the confined space, a mournful rattle. The portrait on the wall seemed to mock me, the man's eyes fixed on me with an expression of detached amusement. My reflection in the garage door shimmered, distorted, as if viewed through heat rising from asphalt. The iridescent pattern beneath my skin pulsed in time with the librarian's words, 4753. The cat's voice intensified. A chorus of prime numbers layered over her hiss. It wasn't a threat, but a statement of fact. I tried to speak, to protest, to deny the accusation. But the words caught in my throat, choked by the oppressive atmosphere. The bone artifact in the librarian's hand pulsed with a sickly, deep purple light. It felt like a physical pressure against my skull, a force attempting to reshape my thoughts, my memories. I gripped the compass, its cold metal a desperate anchor to reality. It spun wildly, the needle blurring as it struggled to find a direction. The portrait seemed to shift, the man's expression subtly changing, becoming more like me. The purple light intensified, bathing the garage in an unnatural glow. The walls pulsed faster, the thrumming vibrating through my bones. I could feel the edges of my perception blurring, the garage expanding and contracting, the fractal repetition becoming more pronounced. It was a dizzying, nauseating sensation. The librarian raised the bone artifact, pointing it directly at me. The fractal requires stability. Your lineage provides it. The cat's voice rose in pitch, a discordant shriek. 5961. The air crackled with an almost tangible energy. I could feel my memories fraying, dissolving, being replaced by something else, something cold and alien. The compass screamed, a high-pitched whine that pierced the oppressive silence. Then, with a grinding metallic shriek that echoed through the garage, the iron gates began to close. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, the heavy metal bars sliding against the concrete floor. The sound was deafening, a mechanical death knell. The librarian's bone artifact pulsed with a blinding purple light, illuminating her face, twisting it into a mask of chilling triumph. I lunged for the gates, but it was too late. They slammed shut with a final resounding clang, plunging the garage into near darkness. The cat's voice was the last thing I heard. 67. The iron gates' clang still reverberated, a dull ache behind my eyes. 67. The cat's voice, a fractured echo. I stumbled forward, pushing against the oppressive darkness, the compass a frantic tremor in my hand. It pulled me not towards a place, but a fine direction. A direction inward. The garage wasn't ending, it was folding. The walls shimmered, the purple light warping the concrete into something fluid, unsettling. The air thickened, tasted of ozone and something else, a sickly sweetness like overripe fruit left to rot. The pulsing intensified, a rhythmic hammering against my ribs. I rounded a corner and the familiar concrete gave way to more concrete identical. The same dust-choked boxes, the same faded portrait of the man with my face, but smaller, diminished. And then I saw them, rows upon rows lining the walls, figures, all of them me, or versions of me, each one a mirror image frozen in postures of quiet desperation. Their skin wasn't quite right, 20 to disturbing sheen, an iridescent quality like an oil slick clinging to water. Their eyes were vacant, devoid of any spark, and they were silent, utterly terrifyingly silent. The cat padded ahead, its crimson fur now visibly clotted, like dried blood caked onto its frame. 71, 73, the prime numbers, a frantic heartbeat in the suffocating silence. I felt a creeping dread, a sense of inevitability. The compass spun wildly, the needle vibrating against the glass, finally settling, pointing directly at my chest. Prime numbers are the keys. The thought wasn't mine. It surfaced from somewhere deep within, a half-formed memory, a fragment of the librarian's words. I reached out hesitantly, towards one of the mirrored selves. Its skin felt cold, slick like touching a decaying fruit. As my fingers brushed against its arm, a silent scream ripped through the air, a psychic wave of anguish that slammed against my skull. Another and another, each touch elicited the same silent horror. They weren't just copies, they were suffering. Their existence a grotesque mockery of my own. 7983. The cat's voice quickened, a rising crescendo of numbers. The room began to shrink, not visibly at first, but perceptually. The walls seemed to press in, the rows of mirrored selves closing ranks. The air grew heavy, viscous, as if I were wading through molasses. The portrait of the man with my face on the wall seemed to warp, his expression twisting into a silent scream of its own. The iridescent sheen on the mirrored selves intensified, spreading like a contagion. I felt a pull, a dizzying sensation of being drawn towards a central point. The compass screamed, a high-pitched whine that resonated with the accelerating prime numbers. The cat led me to the very center of the room, a small circular space where the mirrored selves pressed in on all sides. The pulsing intensified, the purple light blinding. The room compressed further, the walls blurring, the floor tilting. The air crackled with an almost tangible energy. I looked down at my hands. They were shimmering, distorting, merging with the reflections around me. The room shrank to the size of a coin. A single, swirling pool of iridescent oil slick filled the space. The silent screams of the mirrored selves coalescing into a single, agonizing wail. The cat vanished, its crimson fur dissolving into the oily surface. The compass fell from my numb fingers, sinking without a trace. The purple light pulsed, then extinguished. Iron gates grinding shut, the shrinking. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a gradual compression, like a lung deflating. The oily surface of the shrinking space reflected 1,000 fractured versions of my face, each contorted in a silent scream. Disappointment settled over me, a familiar weight. It wasn't anger, wasn't fear, just disappointment. This was how it ended, I supposed. Not with a bang, but a slow, iridescent fade. Why? The question felt brittle, fragile, as if it might shatter against the oppressive silence. I directed it at the cat, though I knew it wouldn't answer in any meaningful way. Its crimson fur, moments ago a grotesque parody of life, was already beginning to bleed into the swirling, oily surface. It wasn't blood, not exactly. More like the color Simbi coming preen, the substance. The cat's eyes, those vacant obsidian pools, didn't register my query. They remained fixed, unblinking, as if observing a phenomenon entirely beyond comprehension. The librarian's proxy, Fuspid. The whispered, the words a rasping exhalation from its throat, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. But there was no understanding behind those words, no awareness of their meaning. Just rote repetition. The room continued to shrink. The mirrored selves, once rows of frozen despair, now pressed against me, their cold, slick skin a constant, unsettling touch. Each one a mocking echo of a potential future, a life erased. The pulsing intensified, a low-frequency thrum that vibrated through my bones, blurring the edges of reality. A slow, viscous drip echoed within the shrinking space, the sound amplified, distorted. It wasn't water. It was the oily substance itself, weeping from the walls. Decay. Copy. Replace. The words materialized within the swirling patterns of the iridescent surface, fleeting glimpses of a language I couldn't quite grasp, yet somehow Schwinn knew. They resonated within my skull, a chorus of forgotten knowledge dredged from the depths of some buried memory. I felt a tug, a subtle shift in my perception, as if my own identity were being subtly rewritten. My hand trembled as I reached out, attempting to steady myself against one of the mirrored selves. Its skin felt colder than before, almost crystalline. As my fingers brushed against its cheek, a wave of nausea washed over me. The room seemed to tilt, the swirling patterns intensifying, the whispers coalescing into a single, agonizing drone. The cat's fur continued to dissolve, the crimson fading into the iridescent swirl. It moved, a jerky, unnatural motion towards the center of the shrinking space. "You are the key," it rasped. The words almost swallowed by the intensifying pulse. The scent of overripe fruit intensified, cloying and suffocating. A metallic tang filled my mouth, the taste of something ancient and corrupted. Then it was gone, completely absorbed into the swirling, iridescent surface. The whispers ceased, the pulsing intensified. The room shrank further, the walls closing in, the mirrored selves blurring into a single, shimmering mass. My reflection. It wasn't quite 20 me anymore. There was a subtle shift, a distortion, as if another face were superimposed over my own. A voice not my own echoed from the depths of the shrinking space. It was a whisper, a fragment of memory, a half-formed thought. 71, 73, the prime numbers, a frantic heartbeat in the suffocating silence. The voice resonated within my skull, a parasitic echo. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing myself from a distance. My reflection in the swirling surface parted its lips, and a voice cold and alien whispered, 79, 83. The words were mine, yet not mine. A hollow mockery of my own voice. The purple light pulsed, then abruptly extinguished, plunging the space into an oppressive darkness. The grinding of iron gates echoed, a final mournful lament. The garage air tastes of wet rust and decaying leaves, thick enough to choke on. I sit on the hood of a rusted sedan, the metal cold through my oil-slick skin. It's not just wet, it's andalive, a viscous film that clings and slides with every minute shift. The compass in my pocket hums against my thigh, not pointing outward but inward, drilling toward my own chest. Finward. Fractal Core. Endless rooms within rooms, each a smaller identical mirror of this garage, each holding a version of me dissolving faster than the last. 1,000 Samuel Bartholomews, all shrinking, all losing their shape, all reflected in the iridescent oil that now coats every surface. The crimson fur trail the cat left, dried blood smeared across concrete, glows faintly under the deep purple light bleeding from the walls. It leads nowhere, just like everything else. The low-frequency pulse thrums in my molars, a constant vibration beneath the floor. 71, 73. The prime numbers whisper, not from the walls, but from the pulse itself, a relentless mathematical heartbeat in my skull. 79, 83. The sound is the texture of the air, the sound of my own bones grinding. I try to pull my hand away from the car hood, but the oil-slick skin resists, clinging like a second membrane. My reflection in the oil surface isn't mine anymore. It's blurred, layered with the ghost of the cat's crimson fur, the vacant obsidian eyes of the proxy now superimposed over my own. You are the key. Wah. The rasping whisper echoes, but it's hollow now, just a sound in the pulse. Then the air shatters and, not with sound, but with absence. The deep purple light flares sharp and cold, and the spectral librarian stands where the empty space was. It wears a suit of shadowed parchment, its face a shifting blur of forgotten words. In its hands, held loosely, is a small, clear vial. Inside, my voice swirls, a perfect echo of my own podcast intro, the words I'd spoken just yesterday. Welcome to the Sleepless Hour. It's a stolen sound, a ghost of my own cadence, trapped and pulsing with the same low thrum. You were always the copy, it says. The words aren't spoken, they're shufused into my mind, a vibration against the pulse. The vial rattles, the voice inside it repeating Fu 71. 73, I louder, sharper. The vial's glass is cold against the oil-slick skin of my palm where I'd unconsciously reached out. Copy. The word resonates with the pulse, making my vision swim. The fractal rooms around me flicker, each reflection of me dissolving faster, fingers melting into the oil, shoulders losing definition, the iridescent surface swallowing the edges of my face. The crimson fur trail glows brighter, pulsing in time with the prime numbers. The pulse crescendos. It's no longer a vibration, it's a physical pressure, a crushing weight against my chest where the compass points. My skin feels like it's being pulled apart, molecule by molecule, the oil-slick surface drawing me inward. The spectral librarian raises the vial higher, the stolen voice screaming 79, 83, in perfect distorted harmony with the pulse. My reflection in the oil surface parts its lips, and the alien voice timp in my voice now hollow and wrong whispers 79, 83. Back at me, the deep purple light flares violently, then dies. The garage vanishes, replaced by the iridescent abyss. The last thing I feel is the cold touch of the car hood beneath me, now just another slick surface in the endless dark. The prime numbers reach a peak, a single shattering note of T 83, before the sound of grinding iron gates echoes, slow and final, deep within the abyss. Then, nothing. Just the sound of my own dissolution, a silent, endless drip of iridescent oil into the void.